Spiritual Barbies, Spiritual Kens, Gabrielle Celeste here. Welcome back to another episode of the Spiritual Sisters podcast. It is bright and early on a rainy Friday morning during this Mercury retrograde, but let me tell you, we will not be affected by any type of Mercury retrograde nonsense in this recording. I am so excited. I feel like I'm bright-eyed and bushy-tailed for sure, but I'm not in the same time zone as our guest, so I don't think she can say the same. But welcome back, my dear friend, my beautiful friend, my international bestie, the Angell Kelly, the one and only. Welcome, welcome, my double Turian, gorgeous bestie. How are you doing?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing really great. That little, just like listening to you firing up was like firing me up. And so I feel good and excited. And over here in Greece, where I am, I think 10 hours ahead of you. I think that's what it is.
Oh my gosh.
So, not bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, but you just gave me some of that juice. So,
Okay.
doing good.
Okay, we're here for it. So, if you've not yet listened to episode 75 with my friend here, please go back and take a listen to that. And you're going to hear, I think we were doing the questions at that point, and I'll ask them again. But both Angell and I are 4/6s, and 4/6s like attracts like. So, we're very much we're very similar in a lot of ways. But I was just reading back the title, and it was like how to know when to pivot, and I'm like, how on brand is that for what we're talking about today, and said pivots that have occurred since our time together last year before that.
Wow.
Actually, no, yeah, 2024. Oh my gosh, wild. Mm-hmm.
I think that episode was probably after I had visited Greece for the first time as a holiday. And I did not know then when I recorded that episode that this was the pivot coming. But here we go.
Yeah, I'll let you tell that story, but Canadian, living now in Greece almost 18 months later. So it's wild. It's so cool.
Indeed.
Girl is living into her purpose. Okay, so before we get into the topic for today, let's just do like a gentle rapid fire. Again, for those who haven't listened to episode 75, but please go do so, of just the questions we like to ask our guests. So as a kind reminder, would you be so kind as to provide your big three in astrology?
I am Taurus Sun, Taurus Moon, Cancer Rising.
Oh, yeah. Let me tell you, my friend Angell, she has the best taste. She has the coolest style. She's just a cool girl, like a cool girl.
I don't know if I'm a cool girl, but I like cool girl clothes. That's for sure. I do love me some fashion. And honestly, I thought when I moved, because I live on a Greek island, and I thought when I moved to a Greek island that part of me would kind of like step aside for a while because I just, you're on an island, it's remote, all that sort of thing. But no, alive and well, still love the fashion, still creating outfits, even though, not as many people are seeing them.
You are living your truth, that's for sure. And I love that. I definitely I'm like, oh man, I see how she paired that up, and I take cues from you for sure. So thank you for being you. Okay, so please remind us what your human design makeup is.
I'm a generator, 4/6 generator, emotional authority.
Yeah. Sometimes I don't see the emotional with you. I feel like, to me, you kind of cosplay as maybe a sacral generator.
Here, I actually resonate quite a bit with the emotional authority. Once I understood it, you're meant to ride an emotional wave before you make your choices. And so I always do. I always give it at least 24 hours, and how I feel about something can change dramatically in 24 hours. So I have found that to be a very, very helpful piece that human design gave to me.
Yeah. I may be thinking back. I see the emotional for sure, but it's very grounded because of the double Taurus. And I always like to say, I'm like, you are one of the most, if not the most, grounded people that I know. And it's great. Thank you for sharing that energy.
I do get that a lot, and I receive. I think, when you're a very grounded person, you maybe don't know it as much, but I have come to really learn to love that part of myself.
Hmm. Yeah. So, my friend, what are you listening to, consuming these days in terms of podcast, books, audiobooks? You and I both like some of the same, like fantasy
Mhm.
books for sure, but let us know.
Guilty.
Hmm.
It's so crazy. The like rhythm of my life here hasn't allowed me as much podcast time as I used to have, which I'm sure I'll find a way to get it back. But it has allowed me a lot of reading time. I've read so much since I moved here.
Hmm.
Love it. And right now I'm reading a book called Zealot. Zealot. I'm going to assume that's how you say that word. Zealot, Jesus of Nazareth. And so it is about historical Jesus rather than Christian Jesus or Jesus Christ. And so I'm really enjoying kind of in my nonfiction category, I'm really enjoying books of this genre. I'm sort of digging back through Christianity and trying to learn about it on more like I'm trying to find the truth, the truth
Hmm.
behind the agenda. And so
Hmm.
I also was rereading my book on the rosary and lots of books on prayer and stuff like that. So that's the kind of stuff I'm into right now.
And just to like put a little pin in that, that is very much a foundation for what we're talking about today, which I can't wait to get into after these next couple questions, because I feel like there's such like a marriage between Christianity and spirituality, and religion and spirituality. So yeah, we're gonna get into it. But before we do that, if you had the opportunity to work with anyone, famous or living or dead, in the context of your business, collaboration, them being a client, etc., who would it be and why?
Mm. You know, Krista Williams is coming to my mind right
Oh,
now, so I'm just going to go with that. Yeah, I
okay.
really I would love to work with her, not as having her as a client, but rather like work with her in some sort of like speaking capacity, um, event capacity, something like that. I feel like a lot of her path, there have been a lot of similarities in the types of healing that I see her doing. And I think she's like doing big, brave things. And I look up to her in a lot of ways for that.
Yeah. Her process in the last couple of years has been very impressive, and I should say her journey and like those leaps that she's taken for herself, and it looks like it's paying off because you and I were both shared. I'm like, dude, her boyfriend is so hot, so
Oh, her boyfriend, what? I'm
hot.
like, get it, girl. Yes, you deserve. He better be a lot more than just everything to look at. And I'm sure he is,
Yeah,
given the amount of like healing and whatnot that she stands behind.
100%. And I'm like, you don't attract a quality man if you're not in a space like, at least like, if when you've done that much healing. So I couldn't agree more. Um,
Preach.
we are manifesting her on the show one day.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So if you could go to a concert, actually, I have one more question after this because we're changing up the questions and the podcast soon. Um, if you could go to a concert for an artist, living or dead, who would it be and why?
Mhm. Chris Stapleton.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
he's good.
he's really good, and there's something about him. Like where I come from, country is like a thing. But Chris Stapleton country is like soul, it's very
Hmm.
soulful. So it both connects me to home and it's like something I can stomach on a daily basis. Whereas like generic country, I got to be in a certain mood for.
Hmm.
And yeah, his voice is really beautiful. And I think both Shane and I like it. So it's something that connects us back to home.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. And then how? This is the new question.
Okay.
How would you define spirituality or your relationship to a higher power?
How would I define spirituality? I think spirituality is a connection to a very deep, deep connection to self so that you may connect to God, the divine source, whatever word feels good for you. And so it's everything involved under that umbrella. In order to deeply connect to self, there's a lot of healing, there's a lot of personal development, there's a lot of awareness, all that sort of thing. And I really believe that that is spirituality in a big way.
Mm-hmm.
And then everything that comes with connecting to God.
Yeah, I agree. That's beautifully said.
Interesting question. When you asked it, I was like, how have I never thought about this before? So funny. It's just like one of those catch-all words where like spirituality. She's spiritual. What does that even mean? Like, yeah, anyway.
Well, I also think that's a really nice segue for what we're talking about today, which is it's been really cool just to like reflect back to you what process you've been through in the last maybe like 8 months, I would say. Oh, definitely a year, but 8 months just came to mind with respect to like how you're curious and how you see so many crossovers and similarities between the traditional archetypal like Christianity or religion in a systematic dogmatic way, right, versus just kind of like the very broad and open spirituality, because you still, and correct me if I'm wrong, identify as a very spiritual person but have been very curious about the crossover. And for me, and I've said this to you before, I think over text messages, where you give me a lot of Mary Magdalene vibes. And you want to see things for the truth and what they are, and let that be what informs you and not what you're told. And I really appreciate that about you. And I would just like to get into what that process of seeing the similarities between, again, like traditional systematic religion and spirituality.
Mm-hmm. So, where do I begin? I think spirituality, in a sense, is just another version of religion. It just like keeps sort of updating over time. And I'm really brought to the awareness, especially being here in a very old country, where sometimes I'll witness like Temple of Demeter, for example. I'll witness a place that is over 2,500 years old that people would go and pray at, that people would go and worship at 2,500 years ago. And it makes me think about how something that we've been doing forever is having connection to the divine, whatever religion we call it, whatever divine we call it, whatever words we use, we have been in some way or another praying to, worshiping, looking to for guidance, connecting to, talking to, creating rituals around, creating ceremony around. We've been doing this for thousands of years. And under which hat, whether we call that, the Greek gods, or under Judaism, or under Christianity, or whatever hat, or now spirituality, we're just kind of finding an organized way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so spirituality, New Age spirituality, whatever you want to call it, in particular, I think was born out of folks feeling very uncomfortable with religion, with their experience with religion, with what they know about religion, with what has happened because of religion, very uncomfortable with it, rejecting it, but still wanting connection to God, still wanting connection. And so then spirituality, New Age spirituality, was born as a way to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Can I guess I would like to go deeper. Do Have you come to notice if there's any like crossovers in the sense of like how spirituality and maybe organized religion are arguably the same? And do you
Oh,
have any examples of like how you see that in your
I mean,
experience in your day-to-day life?
yeah, I mean, what is spirituality? What is religion? Like I said, I think spirituality is just religion without a hat, without an
For sure.
institution running it. So in the
Mhm.
end, the crossovers being prayer is often a crossover, and maybe under the church hat it's prayer, and there are set prayers, and under the spirituality hat it's saying what you're grateful for and setting intention.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
under the religion hat, you might have ritual around. Well, you have ritual around many things, many stages in life, ceremonies around birth, around marriage, around death. And then under the spiritual hat, we're creating rituals around so many things. We're creating rituals around full moons, new moons, stuff to do with like letting go of people, letting go of jobs. We're kind of creating ritual wherever we feel we need it.
Mhm.
Um, you know, the big way that they don't cross over is that spirituality doesn't really have it doesn't have an organization to it the
Yeah.
way that Catholicism does, or Judaism, or any of these other religions. And it doesn't have like a point person standing at the front,
Yeah.
telling us what to do. But God, under let's say Christianity, we'll talk about God. Under spirituality, we'll use words like the divine source, the universe.
Mhm.
Those are just some of the ways, but it's kind of all the same. It's just sort of the way that it's changing over time. And I'm sure, give it another, I don't know, 100 years, and spirituality, we will have moved on to something else.
Do you for you, what prompted you, I guess, to be curious between the crossover of
Mhm.
spirituality and organized religion? Because it's been really admirable to watch you kind of get curious and question just crossovers, I guess. That's just the word I'm going with and using. And I say that because it feels kind of like, at least the information I've come across, and it's very much a topic I'm interested in. Um, it feels like the information that's out there, it's like you kind of have to go scavenging for it. And what you're scavenging for, it's like, well, is this accurate? Is this not? Because there's not really one defined resource where you can be like, okay, this is the most accurate storyline of what has occurred. It kind of just feels very scattered.
Mhm. Yeah, so what prompted me? I mean, really, this has been my own process. Um, so I'll share a little bit about my history around religion. So I grew up attending church under the Anglican house, which is like somewhere in between Protestant and Catholic. Um, and my father was very religious. We did all the things: baptism, first communion, confirmation, yada, yada. But I never connected to what was going on, what they were telling me, what was like, any of the words. Nothing was landing. I didn't like going to church. There was a lot. It wasn't just not landing. There was also a lot that was actually very uncomfortable and didn't sit right in my body. I just didn't know that. I was younger. And so once I became an adult and I started going to university, I started to push religion away, and I started to get angry and really reject the idea of religion, all the bad things religion has done, God. And I was doing a philosophy degree at the time, and
Oh, okay.
philosophy is all about, making sense of things. And so I was kind of using that to prove that there was no God, and that I was writing my dad emails trying to prove to him.
I don't think I knew this about
Um,
you.
yeah, I had my rebellion phase, and then somewhere shortly after that, I got word of the universe.
Hmm.
And that's when that started to get really popular. I jumped on the secret train back in I don't know, 2006, whenever that was. And I was like, yes, this feels good. This feels better. This resonates. And so that was sort of my entry into New Age spirituality. And it continued from there. And I got comfortable with the concept of the universe and spirituality as my way of personal development, and feeling connected to something greater than myself. But it wasn't until late 2021, early 2022, I started studying A Course in Miracles, which for your listeners, if they don't know, is a channeled text. It's actually Jesus channeled. I didn't know that. The course found me. I didn't even know, I didn't know anything about it. I just started it. And as I was reading these universal teachings, because A Course in Miracles is really about teaching a mindset shift from one of fear to one of love.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was reading this, something started to open up inside me, like I was unlocking something deep that I had known all along, that I've known for lifetimes as a
Mm-hmm.
soul living on this earth. And I just opened up to God. A Course in Miracles uses a lot of Christian language. And at first I was like, no, uncomfortable, triggered. But by that point in my process, I knew that a trigger meant for me to go deeper. And so I did go deeper, and I reprogrammed my blocks around the Christian language so that I could get deeper to the lesson. And from there, I connected to God. And that's when my spiritual awakening really happened. And that's when my intuitive gifts came online. And that's when I think, as soon as I shifted from I'm connected to the universe to I'm connected to God and I'm talking to God, there was a big shift. And I know
Mm-hmm.
they may just sound like words to your audience, but there's a shift in the frequency of just those words.
Mm-hmm.
And and from there, I reclaimed God in my own way that was authentic to me, that was personal, that was a real relationship. And then I just started going back, Gabby, and I just started reclaiming different things that one might call religious or owned by religion, but I just went and reclaimed them as my own, under no religion, under just me connecting. So
Mm-hmm.
things like prayer, things like the rosary, things like Jesus, Mother Mary, Mary Magdalene, going to church. I started to do all these things, but like nobody owned me or my relationship to them. No religion
Mm-hmm.
is telling me how to do that. It's me and God that figured out what felt good.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
and you know what? You didn't judge yourself in the process, which was actually really beautiful to witness as you've made this transition, because you still identify as an intuitive, but you see, again, those similarities, the crossovers between spirituality, and I'm doing quote marks for you watching on YouTube, um, and Christianity or religion. And how would you say that, like, taking accountability and also like doing the shadow work in the process, because that's actually something you're very good at doing that I can't say about a lot of people in this space, just because I've had my own little dance with shadow work this year and I have a whole different definition about it. But you do a very good job of acknowledging, like, okay, I am triggered. Okay, this is something for me to look at. Okay, this is part of my shadow. And you still very much marry I'm just using these as defining terms, as spirituality and like Christianity very beautifully. And I'd like to talk a little bit about how, like, your shadow work and accountability has informed your process and still seeing the beauty between the two.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. I mean, my spiritual awakening came on the backside of years of unblocking work, of
Mm-hmm.
shadow work. So I would attribute my spiritual awakening, me being able to connect to God, my intuitive gifts coming online, to all that work. I,
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe if I hadn't done that work that I would have had that awakening. And then going forward, I, some of the work that really supports me as I take a second look, let's say, at Christianity or a second look at religion. Some of the stuff that informs me, I pay attention to triggers. Triggers are often a great cue, a great flag for something within us that we need to look at. So I had to do a lot of trigger work around God, Jesus, Christ, like all sorts of Christian language, which seems wild because these are words, but and no, they are not just words. And then the thing I rely on the most is I have developed my intuition. Alongside developing your intuition, you develop discernment.
Yeah.
There could be nothing more important to me as I take a second look at religion than discernment. And I mean that from both angles. So, for example, let's say I'm listening to someone that's very, very Christian. Because of my attunement to my intuition, my discernment to God, I can hear what is of the light and what's meant for me to take and what I'm meant to open up to. And I can hear what isn't of the light, which is likely ego coming through or whatever that happens to be. And I get to use that to stay really open, and not immediately close down. Because if I didn't have that, I would hear one thing that's off and I'd probably slam the door shut on religion. But there's so much light, there's so much history, there's so much to be discovered there that you will miss out if you just slam the iron doors shut. So you need to have that discernment and the trust in yourself in order to go there. And I've been, I'm grateful to have built that up in advance so that I can do that.
So this might be a little bit of like a controversial question, and you can navigate it as you wish, or we could just move on and Brandon can cut this out.
Hit me.
Yeah. Well, so like something that I've noticed, and I've had this conversation with another colleague that we both know in the space, and she had mentioned something where she saw a lot of like the OG practitioners in that were identified as intuitives, as psychics, as doing this work, right? And then they made this complete, really, really hard 360 shift to entirely Christianity. Like Jesus is the way. And I'm not judging it, but I'm curious about it because I wonder how much of that relates to one's discernment and or lack of accountability of taking, on their own inner work and their own shadow. And if you kind of have noticed anything about that in this space that you'd like to speak to, having gone through a process where you kind of see the marriage of the two.
Yeah. I find it very curious. I'm very curious, as you are, because it feels dramatic.
Mm-hmm.
There's like a hard shift, and now everything spirituality, New Age is witchcraft and devil work.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay. To me, the devil, the darkness, is not like, some place in hell. It is the duality, the other side of light. And it can find its ways in anywhere. And I find that it loves to work within the house of religion.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's because people really find a sense of belonging in these spaces.
Yeah.
Belonging, which is speaking to a deep survival mechanism in us, right? All we ever want to be is belong so that we can survive, stay in our tribe. So there's this deep belonging, and that attachment I could see is a place where the darkness can find its way in, because you're not going to be you're not willing to give up that attachment, that belonging, that being part of something so powerful. So my take, let's see. I'm very curious to see how all that goes. But I am always very wary of anything that has othering language, othering concepts, exclusivity, anything that separates us. And when I see someone going there and now New Age is bad, that's devil work. When I see that happening, I'm like, that doesn't smell good to me. Anything, because God, Jesus, not about othering, not about us versus them. It's about unity. It's about loving each other. It's about loving your neighbor like you love yourself. And so when I hear and see that, and there's like a hierarchy that's beginning to, we're better because we follow Jesus, all these sorts of things. Yeah, it doesn't smell good. It doesn't smell like God to me. But there's lots of great, beautiful light work within that. And so I don't know, I guess everybody's got their process. And why is that happening so much? I don't know. We're going to see, I think. I think it's speaking to the cracks within the spirituality industry. Because no one way, how do I say this? If religion is, institutionalized spirituality, and then spirituality is kind of like an industry in and of itself, it is not better. That it doesn't mean that it is like it has its weaknesses too, and there are lots of ways for the darkness to move in there. So perhaps people who are experiencing a lot of that are then, wanting to fall back onto Christianity. I don't know. I feel like I'm watching a little bit of a movie taking place, and maybe I'm a little bit part of that movie. Look at me. I'm finding my way. I'm reclaiming parts of Christianity. And not to say that I'm doing it better. I am not, it doesn't mean all of these parts of my spirituality that I've grown in myself aren't also great. It's not one or the other. I get to be all of these things. And I know that God supports that in me. God's not like, oh no, only this way. Otherwise.
Is there, speaking of that, and kind of just seeing a lot of, I guess, misinformation is the word, or not as accurate information in terms of resources to learn more about this, so it sounds like you've informed yourself purely by your own discernment, in the sense of like what does and doesn't feel good for you, which I think is actually what makes you as talented of an intuitive as you are. I guess, is there any resources that come to mind that you would suggest for people to start with that are reliable, that you know of? Because in a lot of ways, Angel, I see you actually creating something like that, which is like a really beautiful crossover. And because the last episode we talked about was like how to know when to pivot, it kind of feels like you're in the middle of the pivot in terms of what you're going to be creating that speaks to this type of resource.
Yeah. Tricky, very tricky, because resources around religion resources, period, are full of human. And human generally has ego and an agenda. So what would I say? Okay. The Gnostic Gospels, Gnostic, Gnostic. So these were the Gospels that weren't included in the Bible, that were actually burned and destroyed, but that were found eventually. These Gospels, there are a couple things that they refer to, which is probably why they were burned and destroyed. And one of the things they refer to is females as spiritual leaders.
Yeah.
And another thing they refer to is that the wisdom, the answers, God is within. And so I think this is kind of a beautiful place to start. Of course, gospel is full of like, you'll interpret it the way you wish, but you can find some gospels, like the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, that's one of the Gnostic Gospels, that this is the fundamental teaching. That the answer is within, that Christ is within, that God is within. And I think when we can learn that, isn't that discernment? Once you really truly connect to that and you have that within, then everything you read, there's tons of books out there. There's an entire degree around studying religion with a more skeptical eye. Like there's tons of information out there, but you can be swayed any which way. and you can sway yourself with your own agenda. So really what we want to do is build that connection to that voice within, to that God within, so that as we read, as we take in information, as more and more comes out, we may find truth.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think I don't want to say ignorant, but I'm a little ignorant to this. Where can we find the Gnostic apps, Gospels?
Yeah, like if you do a quick Google, I don't know them all off by heart, but if you just look Gnostic Gospels, you'll see a list of them. Gospel of Mary Magdalene, I
Got
think
it.
Thecla and Paul is another one.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can order them.
I love
Amazon.
that. Amazon, good old Amazon.
They were
So,
destroyed and burned, and now you can have them overnight at your doorstep. What a world. Right?
what a timeline are we on? Yeah, truly.
And
What
may I
world are?
just say, because I think Mary Magdalene has been up and coming.
Yeah.
Mary Magdalene, for the past, I don't know, 5 years, 10 years, has really been taking up more and more space. Mary Magdalene being an example of a spiritual leader who was suppressed, who a narrative was created about Mary Magdalene in order for us all to think nothing of her, think that she had nothing to give, that she had no importance, that she had no no spiritual leadership. She has been coming alive in the
Mm-hmm.
collective. She's coming alive. She has unlocked something inside me, under many women I know. And so I think this is another great place to go. There is a lot of Mary Magdalene teachings coming out, Mary Magdalene circles, Mary Magdalene pilgrimages. And I think that we're going to find a lot of truth by following this path.
Yeah, seen a lot of that same like movement come up online and in the spiritual circles that we are both very aware of, and not necessarily in, but where I mean, it's a lot on social. There's a lot of that information on social media. Is I guess what I'm trying to say about her in the recent years. So I completely agree. Um, okay, so if you had any final thoughts and just kind of like to wrap it up in terms of like spirituality, religion, systematic religion, all the things, just the two,
Mm-hmm.
very similar, different in ways. How would you describe the benefit and how that's informed your process and what people can take away if they were to follow or be in a similar place as you right now?
Yeah, totally. I think there's a real religion wound out there. And
Yeah.
no, for good reason. Like, if not this lifetime, previous lifetimes, there's been so much death. There's been so much war. There's been so much judgment. There's been so much shame. There's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot that has happened under the house of religion. So I understand why the religion wound is there, but don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Is that the same?
Mm-hmm.
In that there's also a lot of light in there. And you
Mm-hmm.
may be doing yourself a disservice by totally closing down those doors. So I would approach the religion wound. And most folks, I would say, are feeling called back to God, to a relationship with God, but they're afraid to go there because they like the word God feels owned by religion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That is not true. That is not true. Let's just say that. I declare that. I hope you can hear me. That's not true. That's not true. So do the reprogramming work that you need to do around that so that you may go reclaim your relationship with God. And you can do that in any way you want. If
Mm-hmm.
you want to go check out a church, go for it. But you can just have a conversation with God. You can pray. You can pray. Even if you're not religious, guess what? You can pray. You can have all
Mm-hmm.
of this. You can read scripture. Like, we're free. We're the most free. You and I can't speak for the entire world, but folks that are listening to this podcast probably being of the same status. We are free. We are free to explore our spirituality in the way that we are meant to, in the way that we are called to. So don't limit yourself by anything coming from that religion wound. That's what I would say. And I would say my own experience has completely opened up and flourished the more I allow any and all of it back in. Like, no one's making me do it. I am just following my heart, the calls of God, and it's taken me to some pretty amazing places, such as living in Greece right now. So,
Yeah.
10 out of 10 recommend.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'll tell you after recording. And sometimes I'm like, Abby, are you doing a disservice by not sharing your personal experiences as they come forth? But we've definitely we have some friends that are impacted by their religious shadow and don't necessarily not support us, but they don't support the podcast because it's not okay for them to, per what they've been told. So, and it's again religious shadow, and I often wonder. It's like I think for anything, that's why discernment is so important, and also the wording that's used, just like you had shared. Um, to have that and to be aware of it because you have to acknowledge where you're giving your power away. And I think it's very easy to give your power away to organized religion.
Yeah. We've been doing that forever.
Mm-hmm.
Forever.
Mm-hmm.
Yo, reading this book about historical Jesus, it kind of like really blows your mind about how much fighting over religion has been happening forever.
To this day, in present day.
It's okay. Enough already. I'm curious, Gabby. I know we're wrapping up, but I just have to ask. I feel called to ask so that your community gets to know you better.
Oh.
What is your relationship to religion? How do you feel about it, or concepts about it?
Well, it's interesting because just as I had shared this last comment, I was thinking about it. It's like, damn, Gab, like you've come a long way because I've shared this on the podcast before. My siblings, Brandon and me, have gone to private Catholic school our entire life. And I also went to a religious institution for college, but I was like required to take 2 classes. So it really wasn't that religious. It was a Lutheran university. So I've had it my entire life. And then when I went through my spiritual awakening, my epiphany, really, really hard time. And looking back, I'm like, oh, like honestly, religion, like it resonated, but it really didn't. And it wasn't really there to support me in the ways that I needed it to. Like no one had an answer for me. No one could help me when I was in that season. And in this past really, really tough year that has been 2025, the only thing that helped me was my relationship to the divinity, the divinity within myself. So I would say it's a daily, it literally is a relationship. It's kind of like training a muscle. Like you have to like work at it every single day. You have to ask yourself and take accountability. Like, okay, why is this happening? How did I create this? What's the lesson in this? What does the universe, divine source, creator, however you identify, want me to get out of this experience? And you just keep it moving. And I think that I prefer to be a little bit more free and flowy and not have so much structure when it comes to that, because I think innately um, a higher power is feminine. I don't think it's masculine. I think, if anything, the masculine kind of tainted it with the systemic religious structures. And I think it's really interesting too. I keep seeing Mexico in my third eye, and it's a very religious country. It's very Catholic, but they have nothing but shamanic principles attached to the practices, whether it's Olympia or like the times of years in which they're celebrating Dia de los Muertos, like all of that. So I think God's in everything, and I think it's really up
Our
to you
Lady
how
of
you choose to
Guadalupe.
see it. Yeah, exactly. So I don't know if that answered your question. Thank you for asking that. It was definitely at top of mind. I'm glad that we covered it.
Yeah, like I can feel, because I know you well, I
Mm-hmm.
can feel that you're open to like take what you need, what works for you, and leave what doesn't feel good, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
And to point out what you said about Mexico being both very religious but having these sort of built-in shamanic practices. You know, before these religions came along, a lot of people of the land had their way that they connect to whatever they called it, God's source, whatever. And then religion came and it was like, okay, you must be this or die. And so a lot of the time they would like bring it in. They like found a way to like mesh them. And the church eventually had to just be like, okay, this isn't dying out. One of those examples being the rosary. The
Mm.
rosary, people have prayed over beads, we'll call them prayer beads, for thousands of years. And then religion came in and the rosary was there. And I think they tried to abolish the practice of the rosary, but it was just clinging on. It was something people had done for so long. So then they just made it work under Catholicism. And so I think you can find a lot of those things within religion. And that's what I mean by there's a lot of light in there. You got to do some scrubbing. You got to do some looking around. You got to take what feels and resonates and leave what doesn't. But
Yeah.
there's a lot to be discovered.
Yeah, I completely agree. And again, take what resonates, leave what doesn't. And I like to say that at the beginning of every reading as well. So thank you.
Mm.
Thank you for that. So speaking of people listening to you, I don't want to say take because that's not what it is. People hearing more of what you have to say with respect to this topic and all of your offerings, your coaching, your one-to-one sessions. Where can people find you? Let us know about your podcast. Tell us all the things.
Yes. Okay. I have a podcast called Spirit Club. And actually, right now, I'm doing a series called My Reclamation Series, where I talk about all these parts of spirituality I've gone back and reclaimed. But generally, the podcast, we talk about doing the inner work so that you can live a beautiful, happy, aligned life. And then to work with me right now, only through waitlist. You'll have to put yourself on a waitlist, but I do readings, intuitive readings, and I also do ongoing mentorship. And I open that up every quarter to take in fresh clients. So there are waitlists that you can join, or you can just watch me on Instagram and you'll know because I will pepper you with information about it.
Absolutely. Oh, well, I always love having you on. I love talking with you. I feel like we could talk all day. We just riff. So just background for people listening to this podcast. Angel and I have been friends for going on almost 3 years now.
Yes.
And in said period of time, her and I have texted weekly, almost daily at times. So very close friends. I can say without a shadow of a doubt, you have such a strong integrity, beautiful inside and out, and people would be so lucky to work with you.
Thank you, friend. I received
Mhm.
that. Thank you for having me on. I mean,
Anytime.
it does feel like one of our chats continuing from voice note into a public way, and I love that. Love that for
Mhm.
us. And I love all the great work that you do in the world. You lead the way.
Oh, thank you, friend. Thank you, thank you. Well, until next time, you're welcome whenever. Friends, be sure to check out Angel's show, leave her a review, and can't wait to have you on again. See you.
Bye.
Bye.